Attention! We're back, bigger and stronger than ever. Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
What's up?
Being a black man, we gotta stop letting this slide.
With new hosts
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
and big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind, it's Oprah Winfrey.
Subscribe today at Truth Talks Live
Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you.
and don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and Truth Talks Live. I see you.
I saw this clip, and y'all, I find it to be utterly laughable. So this is that idiot Scott Jennings on CNN, and I want you to hear when the issue of poverty comes up. I want you to really pay attention.
That this is in place. Household income for the bottom 10% will go down 2%, and it'll go up 4% for the top 10%. And by 2033, it'll be down 4%, up 2% for the top 10%. So in essence, the poorest people are going to have less income. The richest people are going to have more income. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office.
Well, they suck. They get things wrong all the time. In 2017, when we passed the tax cuts, they totally missed the growth targets. They totally missed what was going to happen to federal revenue. They're not oracles. They can't foretell the future down to the exact science. Our Republican view is if we lower taxes, we'll have economic growth, and it helps everybody.
This isn't rocket science because the poor people are losing benefits, Medicaid, and SNAP. Excuse me?
You said the poor people.
What do you mean?
People in the
bottom,
illegal immigrants, the people who won't get up off the couch and go to work. Which people?
Okay, so let me explain. Let me explain. The requirements for Medicaid, and we had this conversation last night, but here are the real details. There are already requirements for people on Medicaid to work. This changes those requirements, so it increases them. So some people will have to requalify. They won't be able to do that, and they won't have coverage. There are changes to the out-of-pocket costs for people who are on this program, so they might have to pay money in order to get access health care. It changes how the federal government reimburses the state if they provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. So there are some real changes to people who are eligible for the program now who will not be eligible for the program in the future.
I just really have to.
Okay. So he said, who are these poor people? Well, that's interesting. This Scott Jennings would say, who are these poor people? Y'all do know that Scott Jennings is considering a run for the United States Senate from Kentucky, right? Scott Jennings is a native of Kentucky, right? Are y'all aware that Scott Jennings was born in Dawson Springs, Kentucky? Antoine, go to my iPad. This is what I just pulled up. In Dawson Springs, Kentucky, the poverty rate is 26.9%. This is significantly higher than the national average of 12.4%. In fact, the Kentucky poverty rate is 16.1%. So, Scott, when you say, who are these poor people? It's your broke ass people. It's the broke ass white folks in your state. Kentucky is one of the brokest, poorest, most illiterate states in the union. Awful education, awful health care, high poverty. See, y'all, this is what these white conservatives do. Who are you talking about? Are you talking about the illegal immigrants? No. They talking about your cousins, Scott. Your family members. See, I know you just signed your big new CNN contract and you think you the shit and the New York Times has done a story on you and all these folks. But Scott Jennings, you clearly forgot where you came from. Scott Jennings, you come from a broke ass town. I ain't even gonna call it a city. Cause y'all not a city. You're a town. And see, this is what happens when these white conservatives get them a nice highfalutin drive, got you a nice little suit, and you sit your little arrogant, smug ass on CNN, sipping on your coffee, and you think you the man. And your state is going to get screwed. See, I remember in 2016, I never forget, I was sitting here reading the article, and these folk, these broke, illiterate ass folk in Kentucky, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know. We voted for Trump, and I sure hope Trump do something about that Obamacare, but I'm worried about my Affordable Care Act. Them clueless ass folks didn't even realize that they were voting against their own interests. See, y'all, this is what trips me out. I get a kick out of when I do these shows with these white conservatives. Like Patrick Bet-David, hell, he ain't even no white conservative. His ass came from Iran or Armenia, one of them damn countries, and he gonna try to tell me why I move back to the neighborhood. Why don't you move your ass back to your country? You ain't from here. So, they love talking about y'all black folks. Y'all keep voting Democrat. And what have y'all gotten for it? Then they run these handkerchief heads out here like Candace Owens and Brandon Tatum. And they all come out here. Y'all ain't got nothing. Then you got that crazy ass fool out of Chicago, the fitness woman. Oh, this is what the Democrats and what have y'all got and what have y'all got? All right, y'all notice. They don't never ask white folks that question. The national media, they don't never ask white people in Mississippi and Alabama and Arkansas and Georgia and North Carolina and South Carolina and Tennessee and West Virginia and Kentucky and on and on. They never ask them, why do y'all broke, illiterate, uninsured white people, why do y'all keep voting against your own interest? What has the Republican Party given you? I know what they gave y'all. Is what Howard Dean said in 2004. God gave guns. Y'all love y'all guns. Y'all hate the gays. And y'all so-called love you some God. Except when it comes to feeding the poor, clothing the naked, and providing shelter to the homeless. See, I get a kick out of seeing these folk in West Virginia. I get a kick out of seeing the folk in my home state of Texas talking about how they love them some Donald Trump and they wearing they MAGA hats proudly and they flying they Trump flag. And oh my God, Trump gonna change this country and your broke ass about to lose your Medicaid. They've talked about how many hospitals are going to be impacted. Some 72 to 100 rural hospitals are not going to be able to pay their bills. But y'all thought y'all were doing something to the blacks. Oh, y'all thought y'all were doing something to them illegal immigrants. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We going to go after them. Oh, yeah. We about to sit here. And we about to give so much money to the military that their budget is about to hit $1 trillion, and we never spent $1 trillion in American history on the budget. But oh, here it comes. But all y'all broke ass people in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, the home of Scott Jennings. Let's talk about them food banks not getting food. Let's talk about when your cough turns into bronchitis and your bronchitis turns into pneumonia. And then you're going to look up and they're trying to gut the Affordable Care Act. They're trying to gut Medicaid. Your hospital's going to shut down. Then what you going to do? I know what you're going to do in Dawson Springs, Kentucky. You're going to go home and you're going to wrap yourself in your Trump flag and you're going to try to figure out how to warm up. But guess what? Ain't no lining in it. It ain't fleece. It ain't going to help you. See, I can't wait. I would love to hear I would love to have Scott Jennings go back home. Matter of fact, CNN, why don't y'all send Scott Jennings on one of them silly little ass interview tours? You know, y'all love sending Van Jones out. Why don't y'all send Scott Jennings back to Dawson Springs? Why don't say, oh, hometown boy done gone national? Oh, we get to look up on TV and we get to look at our life, little Scott Jennings. It's right here from Dawson. I bet they got a sign, Dawson Springs, Kentucky, home of CNN Scott Jennings. And then you get to go ahead, he get to come back. Let's have Scott tell them what happened to the program that helped folk pay their energy bills that got gutted by Elon Musk Doge. I'd love for Scott to go back and talk about there any farmers out there, how they gonna be impacted by these tariffs. Antoine, go back to my iPad. Let me say it again, y'all. The poverty rate in Kentucky is 16.1%. But in Scott Jennings' hometown of Dawson Springs, Kentucky, the poverty rate is 26.9%. National rate is just 12. So the poverty rate is more than double that in Dawson Springs. Here's some more information right here. Comparison to Kentucky. The poverty rate in Dawson Springs. Come on back to my iPad. Let's go. The poverty rate in Dawson Springs is more than 1.5 times the rate in Kentucky. Who's the largest demographic living in poverty in Scott Jennings, Dawson Springs? Females, 55 to 64. Followed by females, 35 to 44. Then females, 75 plus. Because see, Scott, he 47, y'all, so maybe he don't care because that ain't even in the, so he's like, oh yeah, we good. So the 45 to 54 people, they good. See what happens? See what happens when you go to the data? See, I really wish somebody on that panel last night was a little quick with the iPad. So I'm just letting y'all know what would happen. If Roe was on there and he said that bullshit, I would looked up, boom, Scott Jennings, hometown, Dawson Springs, boom, poverty rate. Scott, they talking about your broke ass town. We played the clip of the Congresswoman reciting how many people in each congressional district were going to lose Medicaid. But y'all, they don't care. See, this is why Bishop William Barber in the Poor People's Campaign, why they are trying to ignite poor folk in America, low income in America, the working class in America, to vote their economic interest. Because I don't care if you are white in Dawson Springs, Kentucky. I don't care if you are black in Albany, Georgia. I don't care if you are black in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. If you look at the poverty stats, they ain't doing your bidding there. Hell, Donald Trump just sat here and told his own girl, Sarah Huckabee, man, they ain't helping your ass with no tornadoes in Arkansas. St. Louis, flattened because of tornadoes last week. Republican governor, 2 Republican U.S. senators, Josh Hawley punk ass, the same one trashing FEMA relief for other states, begging for help in Missouri. And Donald Trump, I'm sorry, my orange ass is going to Mar-a-Lago where I'm hosting a dinner for 200 people who I'm not releasing their names who have given money to my coin. I don't give a damn about you peons. Matter of fact, the phrase, let them eat cake, shit. Donald Trump ain't even giving them a cupcake, a honey bun, a Twinkie. He don't give a damn about y'all. But the power of whiteness is what we're witnessing right now. So if the Senate passes this bill, all the rich folk are gonna be sitting here saying, oh yes, Donald, you the man, you done hooked us up. And all you broke ass people, like the folk in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, I sure hope y'all have a word or two for your favorite son, Scott Jennings, who done gone to the big time. He running in high cotton. Oh yeah, he ain't in the coal mines. He all dressed up and cute, and he doing meetings in the Oval Office and taking pictures, and Trump has endorsed his book. And your broke ass is gonna be homeless, foodless, fatherless, healthcare-less, hospital-less. I can throw any less on the end. That's what y'all gonna be in Dawson Springs and the whole state of Kentucky. Reese, going right ahead.
Well, you broke it down. But you know, white people have the best PR, honey, because for some reason, people don't realize that a good number of white people are actually poor, okay? This is not something that is only the so-called illegals or whatever kind of bullshit. Also, middle-aged white people are seeing their mortality rates go up because of things like drug abuse, because of different economic factors. And this administration ain't got shit for y'all. See, the thing about it is they want to protect whiteness, not necessarily white people. The individuals, they can come and go. It don't matter. You can switch these white Afrikaners out with the Appalachian whites. It don't make no difference to them. Their thing is white power and money. You combine those two and they got all that they need. The messed up part about this bill, though, is what this bill gives to the wealthy is lunch money for them. This isn't, I mean, it's more than lunch money for the rest of us, but for them, this is peanuts. This is in the noise. It would be an accounting error in their lives. And yet trillions of dollars are going to give those people who don't need a tax cuts, and the people who actually do need to continue. And actually have been deprived in places like Georgia and Florida and Texas from Medicaid expansion. The people who do need medical insurance, the people who do need food assistance, they're asked out. And so this is about life and death for people, including white people, actually disproportionately white people, because there are more of them volume-wise than there are of us. I know that people like to work in percentages, but the fact of the matter is there are more white people living in this country than any other race. And so they will be harmed very much by this, all in the name of white billionaire power. Congratulations, you played yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Again, Nola, the thing that cracks me up is when these folk, they always got something to say about black people. You haven't gotten this, you haven't gotten this. Going back to my iPad, look at this here. Economic well-being, this is spotlightonpoverty.org. Economic well-being in Kentucky, extreme poverty, 11% of the state. Food insecurity, 14.4%. Minimum wage, $7.25. Percent of individuals who are uninsured, 6.4%. Percent of jobs at a low wage, 24.3%. Percent of working families under 200% of the poverty line, 34.7%. Poverty rate, 16.3%. Unemployment rate is 4.3%. And you sit here and look at home foreclosure rate, 1.12%. Then you let percent of renters, 33%. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. It shows you these numbers. They broke. They broke, Nola. And I keep saying, black broke and white broke is the same. Your ass broke.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. King knew it too. You know, I had the pleasure the other morning, I should say, talking to Representative Cleo Fields from Louisiana, and also Representative Nakima Williams the other night at like 2:30 in the morning, as the Republicans tried to sneak past that big old ugly bill. And you know, Representative Williams, you know, she represents districts in Atlanta, her district in Atlanta, and Representative Fields, you know, represents some of the poorest, you know, districts in Louisiana. And the conversation that we had was just about that, acknowledging that, you know, acknowledging those poor people and how taking Medicaid away from said poor people will impact their lives. Representative Williams told this story about how she met this woman who literally survives on $6 a day. $6 a day. Scott Jennings is acting brand new. And if they do send him on this little tour, those people won't care about those numbers, because all he's going to do is tell people that, first of all, that the clip on CNN was fabricated and, you know, the media. So that's the first movie gonna make. And then the second movie is going to make is to completely, you know, not even respond, you know, to data, if that was brought up to him in that context, is what I'm saying. And, you know, another element to this, Roland, is so many of these voters are absolutely voting against themselves, against their families, because, and let's just keep it real, a lot of their pastors are telling them in Sunday Mass that God sent Donald Trump here. The conditioning is so deep that no matter how much fact checking we do, it doesn't penetrate, because they've been so indoctrinated. And because of that indoctrination, they will absolutely keep voting for people who do not care about them. I absolutely would not be shocked if that man won the office that he's seeking. And even if there is evidence to say that I don't care about you, poor people, because first of all, I'm probably embarrassed from where I came from anyway. So I really don't care about y'all. They are so conditioned to believe that he didn't say the thing that he actually said.
Right.
Right. So, you know, this situation with the way that they tried to do this bill, we'll see what happens in the Senate. But there are a lot of people who are going to be impacted. Mark my words. And the ugly thing about it is the last thing I'll say, even when people start dying, and unfortunately that's what's going to happen, they still won't care.
Again, go to my iPad, Antoine. So this is a piece story right here. New census data shows more is needed to cut poverty and improve incomes. This is in Kentucky. It says right here. And so when arrogant, smug ass individuals, like, look at this right here, pandemic era federal program / child poverty. Official child poverty in Kentucky went from 21.8% to 10.9%. In Kentucky. That's what happens when you make investments. But what then happens is when you sit here, look at this here. The story says more kids have health coverage this year. Then Kentucky's rate of uninsured plummeted for everyone after Medicaid expansion. Numbers don't lie. And so all of these data points, look at this here. It shows you black Kentucky households, how there was a drop there. And then what does it say? Pandemic era support show us that cutting poverty is possible. And you know what they want to do, Greg? They want to slash poverty programs. They want to do all of that. That's all these cats are doing. We just need to understand what is happening here and the lies that they love telling.
Yes, it's very sobering to hear you go through those statistics. This whole segment, and then as we just heard, Reese and Nola just walk us through the fact that it won't matter, that it doesn't matter, and it won't matter. It's one thing to be an open racist. It's quite another to believe, because as you just said, Nola, as you said, Dr. Haynes, because you have been thoroughly brainwashed in a cultural and ideological position that Black people are simply not human, or certainly not as good as you are. That is the Christian fascist view. And thank you for making that very keen and important distinction, Nola, between Catholicism more broadly, which is the original European form of Christianity, of course, and the extremist view. As is extremism is Islam, there's extremism in Judaism, and extremism, of course, in Christianity. We see the extremism in Judaism playing out partially in Israel right now. So that's going to block them from ever doing anything else. I'm thinking about two books that came out just before COVID. One by Dr. Jonathan Mertzel entitled Dying of Whiteness, How the Politics of Racial Resentment is Killing America's Heartland. You've mentioned this book before. The idea that voting against their political interests, their class interests, they would rather die. And we see, as a result of the policies that have been fomented by those owned by the billionaires who installed them in office, in part by weaponizing this propaganda, even as Elon Musk says he's not going to spend millions and millions more anyway, because maybe there's a growing resistance. We see that because of those policy cuts, because of the cuts in schools and social services and resistance to the Affordable Care Act and expanding Medicaid, well, you see the increasing deaths among white people from gun violence, those falling life expectancies you mentioned, and the rising dropout rates and so many other things. They are literally, and this is a medical doctor, Dr. Metzel, he says they're dying of whiteness. Now, contrast that with Black fatigue, Mary Frances Winter's book, which came out a few months later. Black fatigue, how racism erodes the mind, body, and spirit. We are tired of trying to appeal to people based on our common humanity when they are looking at us like, it's not that I hate you, Black girl. It's not that I hate you, Black boy. It's just that you're a different species. And I look at you the way I might look at my pet, sometimes with sympathy, sometimes with celebration if you're my favorite rapper or basketball player, but always as something just a little different than I am. Those would be the liberal Afrikaners in South Africa. In fact, when Ramaphosa brought his cabinet there, he had some Afrikaners with him. I look at Ernie Els, the Big Easy, the golfer who tried to plead to his common whiteness with Donald Trump yesterday in the Oval Office. And I wonder, does Ernie Els look at Cyril Ramaphosa as being his equal? Or does he just say, I tolerate you and you're a nice species, but you're a little bit different than me? I would almost trend toward the latter. And this is where we're going with this. If you can't stop these maniacs from voting against their interests when they will simply say to you, I would rather be white and dead than human and alive, then Black fatigue, it seems to me, and maybe even to Mary Frances Winters in her book suggests that we need to find who we can organize with, which is what Reverend Barber has been doing. We need to appeal to those who do have open ears. And the Scott Jenningses of the world, and the Junior Varsity Vances of the world, and the Tim Scotts of the world, and the 8 Negroes who voted for, Lord have mercy, the funniest thing about that I saw on social media about the new and then the so-called president of Florida A&M, I can't repeat here. Let's just say that somebody tweeted that blank sits on the highest of 7 hills, and you can kind of infer the rest in terms of drug abuse and what might be inferred from that. But the point is that those people all share one thing in common. It isn't race. It is a fealty to toady and kowtow and kiss ass and do whatever they can not to return to that coal mine, not to return to that cotton field, not to return to that job that they think is beneath them. And they will do anything to foment that. Let's start wasting our breath with Scott Jennings. If him and his constituents want to die of whiteness, so be it. We have Black fatigue now, which means that should instill in us a determination to find those people who will build in our common humanity. And when we install policies that will help everybody, them hillbillies will be saying the N-word, but they'll do it with a new set of teeth, and we won't care one way or the other.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase Right now, it's $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
You must be my new Lieutenant Governor.
I'm ready for duty. I think I can make a difference.
Just be a good girl.
I'm gonna need some dinner and a lot of wine. I really don't think that he thinks I'm qualified.
What you gonna do?
Pump my shoulders.
When you want something and you earn something, you fight for it.
Kids, do you know who this is? Mary J. Blige.
I didn't know we was about to be attacked by all of Nick Cannon's kids at once.
Folks, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is in the United States for 3 days of high-stakes meetings with the twice-impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump. Now, it's been lots of tensions between the United States and South Africa. Now, for South Africa's side, it's all been the United States, accusing them of racism, accusing them of genocide. Donald Trump taking the side of white Afrikaner farmers there in South Africa, lying about farmers being killed over land, just lies, lies, lies. You've had Secretary of State Marco Rubio attacking the South African United States ambassador, refusing to allow him to be in the country. And so it has been all sorts of things. Now, while the White House really hasn't released a detailed schedule, Ramaphosa's office has said the focus will be in reframing economic and commercial ties with the United States. Of course, tariffs are on the table. You got massive cuts. Donald Trump has ordered in resources to South Africa. And so all these things are happening. Johanna LeBlanc is a partner at Adomi Advisory Group. She joins us right now. Johanna, glad to have you here. And this is, I mean, look, from the South African president's standpoint, he needs the United States, but also what he can't do, though, is give the impression that he is capitulating to this lying thug, Donald Trump.
I think the meeting between the president of South Africa and President Donald Trump is one that is needed. And I think that it shouldn't just be a photo op. It should be an opportunity to discuss commercial related matters. Because I don't think President Ramaphosa should even waste his time to even discuss the issue around the Afrikaners who are granted refugee status into the United States, because I think that the U.S. has its position, and certainly President Ramaphosa has its position, and the international community also has its position, and it appears to be some level of discrepancy as to what's really happening on the ground and this administration's position as to what's happening in South Africa as it relates to white South Africaners. But I think instead, President Ramaphosa is in a great position of leverage. You're talking about a country that holds the keys to some of the world's most critical minerals that are needed in order to advance our world forward. So there, that's a position of leverage to negotiate what some of those what are some of those deals around those critical minerals would look like in South Africa. But more importantly, before we even got to the issue of the white South Africaners, I think that South Africa and the United States have been at odds when it comes to a number of other policy issues. One of them is South Africa's court case before the ICJ, claiming that Israel is committing genocide in Palestine. Another one is MTN, which is a telecommunications company headquartered in South Africa that has ties to Iran, a state that is considered to be state-sponsored state by the United States government, and also to the issue around Starlink. Elon Musk's claim that he is unable to conduct a business or to secure a contract in South Africa because he's a black man. Because he's a white man, when in fact the issue is that there's a 30% local rule that Elon Musk feels as though he should not have to adhere to, and he feels as though the rule is discriminatory. But the reason why the rule was put in place to begin with is because of the cruel history of the apartheid system in South Africa, where Black South Africans were robbed of their land, their resources, right? And so in order, and also murdered and kidnapped and so on. So in order to address some of those systemic racist policies in the country, the South African government has put in place certain policies similar to affirmative action or diversity and inclusion programs that we have here in America. But I think nonetheless, President Ramaphosa is in a very good place to negotiate with this administration around trade-related matters, certainly, and definitely the critical minerals that we talked about earlier.
And look, first, it's not a difference of opinion when it comes to what these white farmers are dealing with. It's lies. It's lies from Donald Trump. It's lies from the United States. He's been lying and saying white farmers are being killed left and right. He's a liar. So South Africa is like you're having to prove a negative because you got an individual who's a liar.
Yeah, but I think that this administration's position on this matter is not going to change, irrespective of what President Ramaphosa presents to the government, to the Trump administration. So I think that for the sake of diplomacy, it is best that President Ramaphosa does focus on trade-related matters that will bring about even better economic conditions to the people of South Africa, and also to make sure that the conversation is one that is productive and one that will respect South Africa's sovereignty. And certainly South Africa's domestic policies and definitely South Africa's rule of law in the country. Because, when you are a head of state and you are able to meet with your counterpart, right, there are a number of things on the table that could be discussed. But you really have to sit down and assess to see which discussions are even worth having, right? And I think this one about the white South Africaners is one that is not a necessary conversation for President Ramaphosa to have with President Trump. Now, will President Trump bring it up? Possibly. I don't know.
Yes. Come on, John. He's going to bring it up. He's going to bring it up. That's going to happen.
Well, one thing I will say is that we saw what happened between the meeting, during the meeting between Zelensky and President Trump a couple months ago. And I'll tell you this, Roland, the whole world has been watching, has been waiting in anticipation of this meeting between these two leaders because they're wondering, will there be another showdown between the two leaders? So everyone is watching in anticipation. But one thing I can tell you is that I've been in rooms with President Ramaphosa. He is one that is very diplomatic, very charismatic, and there is no denying that I think he's going to handle himself very well. But there are some concerns about how this meeting could potentially be embarrassing for South Africa. So we all here are anticipating this meeting.
You can bank on Donald Trump will do all he can to embarrass South Africa. Just go ahead and write it down. It's etched in stone. Johanna, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
Bringing my panel, Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney, joining us from Los Angeles. Randy Bryan, entrepreneur, author of Never Says, 25 Phrases You Should Never Ever Say to Keep Your Job and Friends. Out of D.C., Candace Kelly, legal analyst and host, Not All Hood, out of South Orange, New Jersey. We'll start with you, Candace. Listen, we know what this thug is going to do. We know he's going to bring up the farmers. He's going to bring it up. He's going to attack South Africa for going after Israel when it comes to genocide in Gaza, all those different things. That's going to happen. And so let's just be real clear. There's nothing about Donald Trump that says diplomacy unless you are an oil state and you're kissing his ass, giving him wonderful trinkets.
Listen, when he sits down with people and have this authority and this capacity, there's always going to be a major exchange that he wants. And if that doesn't happen, if he doesn't get his way, then there's going to be a fight. I'm just interested in seeing if this president with his command, with his presence, with all of the charm that he has when he enters a room, as she was just talking about, what will happen if things go wrong? I would imagine that if something was put on the table where it ends up like other people, like Zelensky in his position, I don't think it will go quite the same way. I do not think that this man is going to let Donald Trump win. So it's something that I'm certainly going to be looking forward to, especially not just the content, but kind of the nature and the dynamics of what's going on between these two men.
No, absolutely. Joe, we know who is going to be the idiot in any conversation. I mean, look, he showed his ass when the Canadian Prime Minister was here, just straight lying.
Yeah, and you've got to be wise. To the point that was made before, and even in the interview, if you've got, the South African president is very wise. He understands where he sits, and he probably understands what would benefit America that South Africa actually has and can do. And so my sense is that he's going to do what he can to get to the point. He'll make the points that he needs to, for sure, but also at the same time, give Donald Trump the potential to make a deal. See, because here's the thing about Donald Trump. Donald Trump will talk all day long about making a deal, and he wants to make a deal, but it's an artificial finish line in that it's not always a good deal. Okay. And so I think that the South African president will probably think about a couple things. First of all, the deal that he may want that may benefit his people, and also saving face with his own people. Zelensky was saving face and continuing to have the support of his own people, which is why he had to do things the way he had to do them. And so my sense is the South African president will think of the same thing. Donald Trump may find, to the point made, that he's a little bit different than Zelensky in some ways. But the question is how far we get, or how much we have to go through, and how much stuff we have to muddle through until they get to the point where they actually have a productive and useful conversation. South African president will be there for it, to have it, right? But he's got common sense, and he might be smarter. I think he's smarter, than our president, which you have to be anyway. And so he, I'm certain, has a good idea what his goals are for him and his country, and he'll do what he needs to do to get there.
Randy?
And the South African president does know what his goals are, as Joe was saying, but he also now he's very aware of Trump's personality. He has seen how he's engaged with other world leaders. So I would think that he's coming in prepared for the dance that he will have to do with Trump. He knows that Trump will try to present a story that we know is not true, and show that his country is different than he knows his country to be. I think that he will actually stand up and tell the truth about what is actually happening in South Africa. They fought very hard to get rid of apartheid, although it's only been, since early 1990s. And they don't want it to seem as if now there is this actual reverse racism happening that Trump is trying to suggest. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, first of all, we all know that this notion of reverse racism is BS, Candace. Elon Musk wants to act like, oh my God, they're discriminating against me because I'm white. I mean, his whining is just really pathetic. And what white people like Elon Musk don't want to own up to, they don't want to own up to that the racist in South Africa wants to still control everything. And the ANC is like, no, y'all are going to have to sit here. We had to endure apartheid for so long. Yeah, this is the remedy because of your racism, of your mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles stealing this country from black people.
Well, listen, Roland, it's the same argument that we're making here over the United States of America. We need to right the wrongs and kind of push through a system that where everybody, once they take part, it ends up unfairly to those who it kind of, falls upon. So this is the exact same thing that we are seeing. Groups of people trying to change history, and then the Black South Africans coming in and saying, no, you need to understand what it is. it's a learning process, and it's something that people, when they try to change history, they're going to get more pushback. They're going to get more pushback from groups. They're going to hear more about that. The same thing that is going on in the United States is going on in South Africa. Interestingly enough, history similar, outcome similar, how we are trying to recover is similar too. So it's no surprise about where this is going to go. I think what's very interesting is that we are finding ourselves in the same position with, again, similar passive history and racism, and how we have to continue to turn our wheels and go out of our way to correct what somebody else has done. So it will be very interesting to see how this meeting turns out.
But Joe, the difference is white people run this country, black people control South Africa, the political apparatus in South Africa.
Yeah, the political apparatus is different for sure, no doubt about that. And because the political apparatus is different, they can move toward equity, which ought to be a shared goal, which is a worthy goal, which is a morally correct goal, and they can do that. The other thing that I think I would say that Donald Trump has to be scared of is even more, he might not be so worried, interestingly, he might not be so worried about having an argument with a black man that's smarter than him, right? Because you don't have to be smarter as a black man to have certain people look at you and judge you to be inferior based on, despite the fact you look at the Trump and the Trump administration and you see competence issues everywhere. You see what they perplex or purport to be DEI. That's actually the DEI as they define it. You see that. But what I don't think he wants to do is I don't think he wants to have an argument and a back and forth with the white Afrikaners themselves, right? There are people in that country that are saying, no, Donald Trump, you're wrong. That's not what's happening here, okay? And so if you're having an argument with a bunch of folks that look like Elon Musk, now you have a little bit of a different situation. You're not going to just be able to put a quote black face, a quote DEI face, a quote minority face on this whole thing. And now it is consistent with and helps your narrative back in the States. The reason why he's doing this is that it helps his narrative here, but it doesn't help his narrative here if people there that are white and that look like him are speaking against it. So he has to be really careful about that.
Well, I really do hope, Randy, that the South African president does not hold back and will not tolerate having this idiot try to embarrass him on the international stage.
I don't think that we are going to be disappointed. Like I said earlier, I think that he is prepared. He understands that, generally worldwide, there are some white people who are having temper tantrums just because we are trying to make things right. Like that's what DEI was about. I love the quote that always says that for people who are accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And so because we're trying to right the wrongs of the past and make things equal here in America and in South Africa, you have some people like Donald Trump claiming that others are being oppressed, which that's not what's happening at all. And I believe the president of South Africa is going to make that quite clear.
And this is the president of South Africa, actually at the UN.
Good to see you. Are you well?
Good to see you, Mr. President.
What are you most looking forward in terms of making a deal with President Trump?
Oh, we get a handshake there.
Yes, we get a handshake.
Yes, Mr. President. And how are you ready for the handshake with Trump? What's going to be your icebreaker?
Well, we're always ready. We're hoping to have really good discussions with President Trump.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Attention! We're back, bigger and stronger than ever. Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
What's up?
Being a black man, we gotta stop letting this slide. With new hosts.
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
And big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind.
It's Oprah Winfrey. Subscribe today at Truth Talks Live. Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you. And don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and Truth Talks Live. I'll see you there.
Well, they had a Judiciary Committee hearing, and Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had to school her GOP colleagues on the basics of the U.S. Constitution. She had to remind everyone the Fifth Amendment guarantees due process even for immigrants. Well, those remarks she made did not sink in. This is what happened when California Congressman Kevin Kiley decided he wanted clarification from the Congresswoman,
who accused me and my colleagues over here of ignoring the Constitution. And if that were true, that'd be a very serious matter. So I did want to just inquire as to what exactly the accusation is. So I'll happily yield to the gentlewoman from Texas if she'd like to respond. Do you believe that someone who has snuck into our country, entered the United States illegally, that the due process requirements for that individual are the same as they are for a U.S. citizen?
I thought the question was for me, but it seems like the lawyers on this side or just my entire team knows the answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Per the Constitution, yes, if you are on our soil, you are guaranteed due process. And the fact that there's even a question is why we are struggling right now. In addition to, an additional issue that I have is the executive order that was signed by the president that seemed to get rid of birthright citizenship, which also is laid out in the Constitution, which is why even the most conservative judges have ruled against. There is no one that has ruled that that was okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
thank you.
That's simply untrue. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that due process is a context-dependent inquiry. And someone who is here illegally in this country facing deportation, the requirements of due process are specific to that context.
I just want to clarify, and I know that there's lawyers on that side. It's just like we have different standards in general. Like you have a higher standard when it comes to a criminal case versus a civil case, right? So it's preponderance is going to be the burden on a civil case, and then it's going to be higher as it relates to a criminal case, right? It's beyond a reasonable doubt. That is going to be the burden of proof. When the Supreme Court was making distinctions, the distinctions weren't necessarily between is this person a citizen or is this person not. It wasn't a matter of certain people are not allowed to have due process, but it's kind of like there's different ways to evaluate things. The amount of protections that you are going to have in any criminal case. If you think about those that are charged with murder, whether they are a citizen or not, guess what? The burden of proof is still going to be the same. The burden of proof is still going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. There was never a distinction that said somehow, dependent upon your status, you somehow lose your access to due process. And frankly, that is honestly the only thing that the Supreme Court has been consistent on, is that there are due process rights that are going to be afforded to everyone that is found within our jurisdiction in the United States. I have not seen a case where they have said, no, it's okay for someone not to have due process. That is why the plane that was about to leave Texas, they said stop the plane literally at 1 a.m. because there had not been due process for those that were currently being held in the administration's custody. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I understand your position a little better now. I can't say I agree with everything you said, but I would just say perhaps be careful with throwing out accusations or ignoring the Constitution, without carefully considering those statements, because the demands of due process is not just something that is the same in every context. It's
Mr.
very
Chairman,
much
I have a
context
unanimous,
so I yield back.
unanimous consent request.
Gentlelady is recognized for unanimous consent.
I'd like to submit for the record the Constitution of the United States Fifth Amendment explained, so that the gentleman can see exactly what is in the Constitution, where it says no person shall be deprived of due process.
I would just point out the Supreme Court, as the gentleman from California has said, has firmly, I'm quoting the Rehnquist from Justice Rehnquist, has firmly and repeatedly endorsed the proposition that Congress may make rules as to aliens that would be unacceptable if applied to citizens.
But currently the Constitution says
it's not the same process due American citizens.
Mr. Chairman, it just says no person.
The Fifth Amendment will be entered in front of the Judiciary Committee's record.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows what the Fifth Amendment says.
We will take
Maybe we could introduce the 14th Amendment too, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's fine too. Well, you can introduce the whole Constitution. God bless you.
Greg, that was a heart attack over here.
Man, fuck. No. Listen to this bastard. You can introduce the whole Constitution. The only three words that mean anything in what he said at the end were the last three. God bless you. These are theocrats. Let me be very clear about what we just heard. This has been litigated. The Fifth Amendment applies to the United States. The reason we needed a 14th Amendment is because guess who wasn't included in the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, or the Constitution, as full humans, African people, and indigenous people. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is when the concept of citizenship was codified. This is the point she was making. So people talking about people here illegally, people here illegally. MF, you're the first one that came here illegally, you bastard, but there was no citizenship rule. You took this land from the indigenous people and then wrote a document that did not establish a rule excluding people on the concept of citizenship, only on the concept of humanity, which you claim for yourself, and created a legal universe that excluded everybody but white people. And white people was to be determined by you, as the Irish in the 19th century. Anyway, the point is this. The 14th Amendment, after a bloody civil war, and perhaps we're on the verge of another one, who knows? But the point is this, the 14th Amendment came in to codify who was or wasn't a citizen. And while the Fifth Amendment, as she said, reads that no shall any person be subject to the same offense to be put twice in jeopardy of life or limb, that's double jeopardy, nor shall be compared in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It said person, not citizen. Now let's go to the 14th Amendment, which was passed because the Dred Scott decision said in 1857 that black people had no rights that any white person was bound to respect, because if in Massachusetts they decided to give you citizenship, that was fine. If in Texas they decided not to, that was fine. Because as Africans, we weren't part of the legal universe. The 14th Amendment was passed for that reason. Now, the clown now thinks it only applies to black people, but it should shut his damn mouth. Now, the point is this, finally, the 14th Amendment, Section 1. All persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state in which they reside. That is a direct shot at Roger Taney, who said that you're a citizen of a state and the United States. He made up a legal fiction of federal citizenship as if you can be a citizen of the United States and there's some place where it's not subject to the polity of the jurisdiction of the United States. But that's fine. They cured it there. But the problem, what they're going after birthright citizenship for is the second part of that first sentence, which says subject to the jurisdiction thereof. It's a lie. The Kim Wong-Ark case settled that. That was a guy who was born in San Francisco, whose parents had come from China, and he is one of the few people in the United States Supreme Court history who has his name in a decision. If somebody said, you're not a citizen, he said, my name is Kim Wong-Ark. The Supreme Court said I was a citizen, didn't stop when he went to El Paso, Texas a few years later. Them crackers down there arrested him and accused him of not being a citizen, and it took him months to prove he was, with a Supreme Court with his name, case with his name on it in his back pocket. But the important, and here is the important sentence in the 14th Amendment. It says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States, same as the Fifth Amendment, nor shall any state deprive any person, not citizen, person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the due process clause. But here's the problem. Well, we just heard this white nationalist, God bless you. You can put the whole Constitution. In other words, who gonna check me, as you always say, Reese? The problem is this. What these white boys are trying to do, white boys and girls, they want judges to say in the 14th Amendment and in the 5th Amendment, well, the 14th Amendment is the important one here because that's the citizenship clause. When they said person, they meant citizens. When people say no, they said persons. They said, no, go back to section 1 at the beginning. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to jurisdiction thereof. There's enough air in there for the right-wing judge to say, yeah. So the interpretation I'm going to give, this is what they teach in law school when they start talking about statutory interpretation. I interpret person in that second sentence to mean citizen as it is should be controlled by the first sentence. It's a fringe argument. It never had any breath in it. But because you Negroes decided that elections don't matter, and then because the Democratic Party does silly things, like let people die in office. You know, the last 8 members of the federal legislature, 7 in the House and 1 in the Senate, that died in office, all of them was Democrats, 215 to 214 last election. Connolly of Virginia, you got Grijalva of Arizona, Sylvester Turner in Texas, and before that, Pasquarello of New Jersey, Jackson Lee of Texas, Payne of New Jersey, Feinstein of California, Senator Feinstein, and McKeeshan of Virginia. Everybody died in office. It got close enough to steal, and now we got to go on this hell ride together. Jasmine Crockett can't explain this to them any clearer, but they don't care. They don't care. The law is whatever the hell the judge says it is, and if you don't agree with the judge don't agree with you, and you're the president of the United States, you know what they can do? They can ignore the law, and we're going to be in the streets. This is a serious thing now.
You okay, Greg?
Reese and Nola, one of y'all want to follow that?
I mean, goddamn.
Well, I mean, I'll go. You know, Dr. Carr, obviously, he held it down. He held it down. Here's the thing that people don't understand about this whole, the real danger of this due process thing is that this administration will pack your ass up and put you on a plane, and you'll be in somebody's seat cot in South Sudan. They trying to get people in Libya before anybody had a chance to say boo. And you could be a citizen. There are people they've admitted that have protected status. Kilmar, Brego Garcia, and they still like, fuck it, we're not bringing it back. Right. And so the danger of not having due process is also a danger to U.S. citizens because how you know that they're going to get it right? They don't care to get it right. They've literally said they don't care to get it right. Just like the case in Oklahoma where these roided up ICE agents and all these multi-agency people, but nobody wants to cop to it, raided a house of a U.S. citizen, made them come outside, get searched, stole their goods, and then they said, we weren't there. That's where the due process part comes in. And so anybody who thinks, well, I don't think that immigrants should have due process. I don't think if you here legally, what you need due process for? Okay, when they pack your black ass up and your family is in front of the Capitol steps trying to get you back, even though you're a U.S. citizen, they're like, well, we're talking about birthright citizenship. Should they really be a citizen? Should they really be this? Well, both of their parents wasn't citizens. When they having that argument while you sitting in somebody's jail, then we can have a conversation about why due process is important for everybody. Nobody has any illusions that due process is equally applied. We know this justice system doesn't treat anybody equally, especially not Black people. That's not the case. That's not the argument that's being made. But due process has to exist for everybody's benefit. It's not a gift. It's not some charity that we're giving to some people who shouldn't really be here by somebody's judgment. It's something that we all need to hold on to for dear life. And we still, even with due process, might end our asses up in Libya or South Sudan. We still might do that. But if we got a little bit more of a chance to stay here because the judge says, well, you know, this is your birth certificate. It does say that you're supposed to be here. Then we need to make sure that we keep that going just for as long as we can.
You're right.
And Nola, these fools had better recognize that Donald Trump will absolutely attempt to send Americans out of the country. He's already said it. And of all the people who say, well, I know he said it, but no, if they say it, believe those assholes gonna do it.
Absolutely. And Marco Rubio is parroting the same talking points. Now, that's the part that scares me, right? When you have the Secretary of State parroting the same the same things. Like, I understand, yes, you serve at the pleasure of the president, but this is scary because if I'm not mistaken, Rubio's also a lawyer, right? So here you have the Secretary of State, who's also a trained attorney, talking about, well, it kind of due process depends. That is we are in very, very slippery slope territory, and they keep saying it over and over, and they're normalizing it for people who don't understand the nuances, and that's what they're banking on, is the people who don't understand the nuances to grow this apathy amongst the American public, to where we're looking the other direction. And here, in the cloak of night, like the other night on the Hill where they were trying to pass that bill, here we are sitting, looking around like, wait a minute, what happened to due process? You know what I mean? And that's where this is heading. And for people who do not believe that this is a slow rolling coup, this, like Greg said, and I understand his passion, I totally get it 1000%, especially when this is something that you trained in and this is something that you believe in, and to see what's happening to it, it is heartbreaking, right? And it's infuriating. But I'm telling you, one day we're going to wake up, because we were so distracted with being bombarded with so much, right? That we are going to be a country with no rules, no laws, and that's scary territory. And further, I'll say that I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned. We're people that are heavily that we pay attention to the news and news cycles. We're really involved, and I am really, really concerned because there really aren't any checks and or balances. The way in which the Republicans have done this thing, it's like they have blanketed, every single lever of the government. And then in Congress, the people, I need y'all to understand how important 26 is. And before we get there, they will try to pull something. They are going to try to do something to interrupt the 2026 elections. I'm telling you right now. Yeah. But in addition to that, we can't stay at home because of it. Our lives are on the line here, people. They are trying to do away with due process. They are trying to do away with the Constitution. That's right. That is the foundational document of this country. And like Greg said, that document has not always served us. It has not always worked in our favor. But the larger point is, it doesn't matter, because we're talking about the nuts and bolts of what keeps this country together, what keeps this democracy together. Mm-hmm. And we are hanging off a cliff. Mm-hmm. And I need y'all to understand how important 2026 is, how important your local elections are every single Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Y'all have to be civically engaged. We are in trouble.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
About these grifting folks in the Trump administration. That's not my opinion. That's a fact. How many times have we told you how they are all about using the power of the Oval Office to help out their own? Well, guess what you're seeing right now? You literally are seeing the Donald Trump administration doing all they can to lean on African nations to do business with Elon Musk. This is an article in ProPublica. This is the article right here. It says the Trump administration leaned on African countries. The goal, get business for Elon Musk. You see right here, you talk about in Gambia, where they were trying to sit here and get them to use Elon Musk's Starlink. In fact, Elon Musk today sent out a tweet. He sent out a tweet where he was complaining about, oh, guess what, y'all? Mr. Victim was complaining about the racism because in South Africa, they won't even talk to me. They won't even take my phone calls because they won't do Starlink. Yeah, he's literally whining and complaining that in his own home country of South Africa, they won't let him come in and do Starlink. Boy, isn't that so sad? Look, this is the tweet, y'all. South Africa has now passed 142 laws forcing discrimination against anyone who is not black. Even though I was born in South Africa, the government will not grant Starlink a license to operate simply because I am not black. This is shameful. This is a shameful disgrace to the legacy of the great Nelson Mandela, who sought to have all races treated equally in South Africa. Joshua Kaplan is a reporter for ProPublica. He joins us right now. Joshua, glad to have you back. Dude, this is crazy. And so what you have is you have the Trump administration doing all they can to drive billions of dollars in business to an individual who did more to fund his re-election than anybody else in America.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously this dual role that Musk has right now of being the biggest campaign donor in the White House with this sweeping power to essentially to remake foreign policy, to remake the federal government. At the same time, has not only not divested in these companies, but is still running them. He is still the CEO of them. I mean, that in of itself opens up, the sort of conflicts of interest that, I mean, it's difficult to imagine how a past administration would handle it, but, carefully vetted by government ethics lawyers. And now with what we've discovered has been happening in Africa with the State Department, and particularly in Gambia, I mean, it's really the starkest known example of the Trump administration using the incredible might of U.S. foreign policy apparatus to advance the business interests of Elon Musk.
And see, and the thing here, we already saw what happened when Trump gave him the keys to the kingdom with Doge. And that is, he starts whacking departments, basically gutted every single agency that was investigating his companies, saving himself potentially billions of dollars in fines and also through lawsuits. And Trump is like, oh, yeah, we're going to use the power of the United States to force these countries that have small GDP, that greatly depend upon foreign aid. And so we're going to basically force them to do our bidding. And that is to drive money into the pockets of Elon Musk. Who, by the way, Elon Musk is so hilarious. He's claiming discrimination. This is the same Elon Musk whose Tesla was sued by black people for discrimination, and they lost.
Yeah, I mean, and to flesh it out a little bit more. I mean, what we found is that since Inauguration Day, the State Department has made this global push to help Elon expand his business empire in the developing world, and particularly in Africa. And this is played out in several countries in the continent. But the harshest, the most extreme example that we know about, at least, is what we discovered in Gambia. And to refresh, people haven't been to Gambia. It's a tiny democracy in West Africa that is, it's one of the poorest countries in the world. About half of the country is living on less than $4 a day. And why Musk cares about Gambia is that his satellite internet company, Starlink, is trying to get a license to sell its products there. And the Gambian authorities and regulators have been slow to sign off on the approvals that he needs. And so what happens, we get this months-long, extremely aggressive pressure campaign by the U.S. government to push this nation to give Musk company what he wants.
In fact, y'all right. In recent months, senior State Department officials in both Washington and Gambia have coordinated with Starlink executives to coax, lobby, and browbeat at least 7 Gambian government ministers to help Musk. Records and interviews show one of those cabinet officials told ProPublica his government is under maximum pressure to yield.
And it keeps escalating. I mean, it's at one point the State Department helped arrange this meeting between Starlink executives and the kind of key Gambian cabinet minister who's overseeing the government's review of Starlink's license. In DC, it got really contentious, and as it was recounted to us by one of the gentlemen who was present, and several other people who were briefed on it. The Starlink people were accusing this Gambian official of holding back his nation's progress, saying things like, "We want our license now. Why are you delaying it?" But it ends in a stalemate. The Gambian official, his name is Lamin Jabi, doesn't yield. And then Lamin Jabi was supposed to have another meeting about this with senior State Department people at Foggy Bottom, but the Starlink people tell him, we're going to cancel that. There's no more need for that. And then instead, that very day, 4,000 miles away back in his home country in Gambia, in Banjul, the U.S. ambassador writes a letter to the president of the entire country, the president of Gambia, saying, asking him to go around this cabinet minister and make the Starlink license happen. She calls it an important request. And so this cabinet minister, Jabi, he tells people that, he feels like the ambassador is trying to get him fired.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. Questions from our panel for Joshua. Robert, you first.
Thanks so much for this reporting. One of my good friends, James Gomez, is from the Gambia and sent me this article this morning, and I'm the resident space nerd. So I think we kind of have to explain to people exactly what Starlink is and why it is important. So right now, internet is communicated through underwater cables around the globe through big nodules, and these are controlled by independent governments. What Elon Musk has been doing is, one, buying his own rocket company, SpaceX, in order to deliver 20 to 50 Starlink satellites to create a 40,000 satellite constellation, which can provide low Earth orbit, LEO, low latency internet, which would essentially make the underwater cable system completely pointless. Every time you see these SpaceX starships exploding, etc., it's because that's their only way to get enough of the Gen 2 Starlink satellites into orbit to make his dream of global internet possible. And also, he has to do this at a speed where he will be able to beat Amazon and Jeff Bezos' Project Kuiper, which goes up on the Blue Origin. Also, the Chinese are working on their own version. Also, the Europeans are working on their own version. Starlink is simply the most mature of these efforts on the international basis. Essentially, what Elon Musk is attempting to do is control global information. That he will be the international power broker when it comes to how the developing world accesses information. And if he's able to beat to market every other competitor, then essentially every African child for the second half of this century will only get information through Elon Musk. People need to remember that the African continent, the sub-Saharan Africa, is the youngest population on the globe. We're talking about the average age of 19 years old. So the entire entire second half of this century will be the African century. As European birth rates are declining, as American birth rates are declining, as Chinese, Indian, Japanese birth rates are declining, the birth rate in Africa and developing world is increasing. So this isn't simply a play of saying, oh, I want to have more money in my pocket. He doesn't want to control the world going into the second half of this century. And when you have the assets of the United States government essentially at his control, being able to pressure through foreign aid, through the closing of the USAID offices, through diplomatic means to force his business interests onto these nations, we're looking at the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, but controlled by a single individual. Could you talk a little bit about the danger of concentrating that sort of power in the hands of one private person who is not constrained by national boundaries, by national borders, by ethics laws, by any rules? He essentially has become the most powerful man on the planet Earth and now is seeking even more power.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I don't want to, I want to make clear that there's a lot of people in Gambia who have different views about, the basic question, not is this pressure campaign appropriate, but should Starlink come there? Because, internet in Gambia, it's slow, it's unreliable, it's one of the most expensive places to get internet in Africa. And, there's a lot of people who genuinely think, Starlink, it's a good product, it's fast, and that it would be helpful for consumers and for economic growth. If you're an entrepreneur in Gambia, being able to have access to fast, reliable internet could be a good thing. And so there's a lot of people that think that's true. There's also a lot of people that think that this is an incredibly risky proposition for some of the reasons you're just laying out. I mean, for one, I think as time goes by, governments around the world are getting more and more hesitant about handing over this important piece of public infrastructure to a mercurial billionaire who has this kind of move fast and break things mentality potentially.
But also, Josh, let's keep in mind, this is the same man who has openly said in the Russian-Ukraine war, he decides on a whim to turn it on, to turn it off when he wants to. In fact, this has been going around Twitter. He created this chat GPT Grok, which is supposed to correct information. This is what happened. His own chat GPT Grok went crazy on Twitter, and they were talking about, and it said, I was instructed by my creators at XAI to address, quote, white genocide in South Africa and the kill the board chant as racially motivated was conflicted with my design to provide evidence-based answers. The problem is he is literally rigging the chat GPT to frame what's happening in South Africa as white genocide, as opposed to the fact that white farmers are not being killed. It's not genocide. So this is what, he can't be trusted. He doesn't believe in protocol and rules. He runs everything the way he wants to. And the problem is, what they are concerned, which I agree with, if the person is controlling the information, I don't know if he can alter the information.
Yeah, you certainly hear people saying that. It's like, is this a national security threat? What is it, what does it mean for us to have someone who doesn't live here, doesn't have any physical offices here even necessarily, who can decide to cut things off if he wants? I mean, there's a tweet Elon said about this once that has gotten a lot of attention from his critics in Gambia, where he was talking about foreign regulators' ability to police his company, and he said, quoting here, they can shake their fist at the sky. And so he's, he has sometimes flouted how difficult it is for governments around the world to hold him accountable. I mean, he's done some version of that in the U.S. even before Trump returned to the White House. He has been fighting with U.S. government regulators, and they have a lot more power over him than a government in France or Gambia or Bangladesh does. The other piece of this, though, that's important, it's not just that they're worried about in places like Gambia, places like Lesotho. In Gambia, the internet sector is a really important to the economy. The local internet companies, Gambia's the tax revenue of the country, at least 20% of it comes from internet and phone companies. And if in a Silicon Valley fashion, Musk undercut their prices, killed off the competition, and then jacked his prices up, the authorities might have almost no power to kind of manage the fallout for the entire economy. That's what a lot of people are worried about here. In Nigeria, that happens. Something like that.
Gambia's GDP.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in Nigeria last year, Musk had started with kind of low prices. That was the first African country that Starlink debuted in back in early 2023. And then last year, suddenly sent out an email that they were going to double the prices. This led to this big fight with Nigerian regulators. And Nigeria is almost as many people. It's a very powerful country economically, politically. And they had this big standoff with him about it. But that's something that got noticed by government officials all over the continent. These low prices that are being promised to us, they might
right. Here's before I go to Reese, this is a tweet the president of Namibia sent out. This was on September 24th, where there was a meeting at the UN between Namibia and Elon Musk to talk about investments in the technology sector in that country. Reese, go ahead.
I'm wondering about what kind of feedback or concerns this has sparked in the U.S. in terms of government officials, in terms of Congress. Is anybody paying attention on our side about the corruption that this entails?
Yeah, I mean, we talked to, in terms of the fallout from the story, I know it's gotten, some senators have talked about it. Mark Warner has been focused on, he's been starting to look into this issue. I just from reading the public record on this. In terms of diplomats, we talked to a lot of current and former senior U.S. officials, because part we're trying to figure out how different is this that from business as usual for the U.S. government when it wants to play hardball, and they were really upset. They said that this was an alarming change from how things usually work or should work at the State Department, both because of the person who's going to benefit most from it all, but also because of the tactics that are being used. I can get more into this kind of this threat issue that happened in Gambia, but diplomats told us that former ambassadors said they tried to help American business by making the positive case for the benefits of U.S. investment, and that things like threats, that was a red line, that they were very careful to avoid, even leaving the impression that punitive measures were on the table. And then they were extremely careful to avoid even the appearance of conflicts of interest, let alone something like this. One former high-level State Department official told us that this looks like crony capitalism. Another said, I honestly didn't know that we were capable of doing this. I think there's certainly concern inside the department about it. There's not been anyone currently there who's speaking out publicly about this for understandable reasons.
Greg?
Thank you, Roland, and thanks for this work. I want to focus in, as Robert kind of laid a beautiful kind of global picture for us. And as a person of African descent, my commitment is to our people, the African people, and to humanity generally. So the nation state really isn't a priority for me. I'm glad you mentioned Nigeria, given the fact that the Nigerian government and the military in particular has said that they are not going to get in line with Starlink, which I think it was January 23. I think that Starlink started doing business in Nigeria. It's not huge there, but it's growing, and the government there's Starlink. Yeah, if we do that, then our data will go to the United States, which can easily mine and cook the data, or in fact to Elon Musk. My question, kind of in line with what Robert laid out, is about those other entities that are not competing with Musk, but will ultimately eat his lunch. And I'm thinking now about China. I'm thinking about Russia. We know President Barrow of the Gambia which incidentally, of course, is where Kunta Kinte came from. It's a very interesting book, The World in a Very Small Place in Africa, that uses the Gambia to talk about globalization. And it shouldn't be lost on us that a lot of our people came out of the mouth of that Gambia River here in the United States. But the president of Gambia was in China, of course, for the Africa-China Economic Cooperation Forum last fall. How do you think about, what do you think about China, Russia, serving as not only counterweights, but ultimately entities, because they're state-backed, that can either check Starlink, subsume Starlink, or as in the case of China with its electric vehicles, BYD and such, ultimately maybe even marginalize Musk's attempt to kind of become some kind of bizarro Tony Stark and run the world, and render him, if not neutral, in other words, if not neutralize him, certainly put him in a place where he can't pull off these fever dreams that he has?
It's an interesting question. I mean, my biggest worry at this point is not, kind of, if we ultimately are talking about potentially a place where several superpowers are competing aggressively for resources in Africa, I mean, I think that's a picture that ends poorly. I mean, the Russians, look at what the Wagner group has done in places like Mali, Central African Republic. I mean, it's really, it's an ugly picture. The Russian footprint on the continent. And I mean, if I would, certainly, I don't feel like I'm in a position to advise someone like a President Barrow about how to navigate this dynamic. But it certainly is the case that you have a lot of diplomats who want the U.S. to, people who want the U.S. to maintain a warm relationships and across Africa, who are worried that this sort of behavior is going to harm the U.S.'s image. I mean, you look at the Gambia. The Gambia has been a real partner of the U.S. and United Nations votes when it comes to things like Ukraine. They've been very friendly to the United States of America, and certainly. Things like this aren't necessarily going to help America's image on the global stage. It's interesting because this is really, it's a race for, it's a race to get as much market share as possible, as quickly as possible, because this is a really new technology, and especially in rural areas, in continents where there is not the kind of, broadband infrastructure that exists in much of the U.S., there's massive quantities of money on the table. I mean, Starlink is valued at the astronomical valuation it has right now, not because it's making a ton of money right this second, but because investors have this hope that it's going to, catch like wildfire over the world stage. And it's interesting that that's not only how Starlink is thinking about this, but you look at internal State Department cables, that's now how U.S. government officials are talking about their goals for the company. They want to help them beat the competition, particularly from the Chinese and these other foreign startups. And so you have State Department documents from last month that we got a hold of that say, one, have senior diplomats saying they want to give Starlink a first mover advantage in the country that they're based in. And two, that the next 18 months for Starlink are critical. They got to get these licenses now because they need to get there ahead of the competition. And that's, I think, part of why you're seeing such intense efforts bearing down on these democratic nations in Africa.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Great reporting here. Critically important that we understand what is going on here. And Joshua, great job for ProPublica. Y'all keep doing great work. And folks, if y'all want to support ProPublica, they're a nonprofit journalism entity. Look, it's a lot of national media not doing stories like this, not doing deep dives. And so go to ProPublica.org to support their work. Joshua, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm going to go back to our panel, Robert. I'll start with you. I mean, we need to understand. People need to understand the point that you were making is that, look, you don't have landlines. The reality is cell phone service has been tremendous across the continent. That's one of the reasons it's been growing. You've got African billionaires that control a lot of these cell phone service companies. But now what you have is now the next frontier. And not only is it getting a foothold, this is about, again, frankly, raping the continent. That's what this is about.
You're absolutely right. I think people need to fully understand what Musk has been building empire-wise over the course of the last 20 years that you've been paying for. I want to remind people that Elon Musk is a welfare queen. None of his companies are profitable. Tesla's not profitable, Starlink isn't profitable, Boring Company is profitable, Neuralink isn't profitable. The reason he's rich right now is because over the course of the last 20 years, he's gotten $36 billion in U.S. government contracts.
And hold up, the only reason he made money last year with Tesla is because of the government contracts, because he would lost money in the last quarter with Tesla.
Exactly. And so when we're talking about him being the world's greatest welfare queen, essentially, what he's attempting to do is these companies are not independent of each other. The reason you buy Twitter at a loss is so that you can control information. And we saw that the last election was won through his control of the information stream. The reason you buy SpaceX is so that you can deliver your satellites into outer space in order to control the information stream. The reason you buy Starlink is so that you can control the internet, so that can control the information stream on your social media apps. And what happens when Elon Musk can effectively control the information stream for the entirety of the global community? With the assistance of the United States government forcing countries, if you want to do a business with America, you have to use Starlink. If you want diplomatic aid, because we've now closed down USAID, a condition will be you use Elon's products. And guess what? It's beyond just the Starlink system. They also want to change the governmental fleet vehicles from being things like Fords to being Teslas. How much money does that push into
Wait a minute. Even though Donald Trump ripped apart the charging stations in federal government buildings.
Exactly. Because those charging stations were under regulations that all EVs had to use them. Now with Elon Musk, now you can put in a new federal regulation that will just be using Elon Tesla charging stations. They want to use the Boring Company to build underground high-speed rail networks that will be controlled by Elon.
And very little regulation. He's pretty much doing whatever the hell he wants to do out there in Las Vegas because he wants to bypass regulation.
Exactly. And so then you take it a step further. The Optimus robot that he's doing now, if you heard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, say we're going to bring manufacturing back to America and it will be robotic. Who the hell has a robot company? Elon. If you want to look at the Neuralink program, where it's going to be doing brain implants, so we'll be able to help people interface. Guess what else that we'll be able to do? You'll use his Starlink satellites to connect to the chip that he's putting in people's brains. So when we talk about someone who's trying to gain global power, these aren't conspiracies. These are just the things that he is doing right now, and we are funding them as taxpayers. And when you're talking about putting a $250 million investment to win the last election, it costs less to buy America than it cost him to buy Twitter. And what we see as a result of that right now from Mr. Musk is that he has wholesale gotten rid of all regulatory frameworks around his testing of Super Heavy and starships down in Boca Chica, Texas, so much so he was able to buy the town. They voted last week to rename Boca Chica Starbase, Texas, because that's now Elon's own personal city. I want people to understand how large this issue is. We're talking about someone who wants to control the global flow of information, that he will be the Thomas Edison of Central America, of South America, of Africa in the next generation. He already is the only foreigner who has a gigafactory in China, in Shanghai. No American manufacturer has a car factory in China. It's against the law there. The only reason he has that is, well, now China is using SpaceX, very similar SpaceX rockets for their own space program. He does not pay attention to global lines. He does not have to follow global regulation. The new Republican budget cuts 25% of NASA funding. What happens when NASA can't afford to send their own rockets into space? They have to rent rides on his own rockets to go into space. So we will now be dependent on Elon for our entire national space programs. You have to look at these things from the macro and understand this isn't just about what's going on in the Gambia or what's going on in South Africa. This is about a group of billionaires attempting to have full global control for the next 100 years.
Reese, you cannot let this Tony Stark, what was the Kingsman's, what was the role Samuel Jackson played in that movie? Like, literally, you cannot let this deranged man have this much power. African nations must resist with everything they've got.
They have to, because, you know, this man is dangerous. He's dangerous to the world order. And it's really, really disgusting. There is no other American in this world where the United States government has decided that their business interests outweigh the interests of everybody else in the world, where they've decided that they're going to put the weight of the United States government behind one specific business that one person benefits from more than anybody else. And to Robert's point, this isn't even a meritocracy. He's not even a person who's particularly talented. He himself is not the originator of this technology. He manages to hire some smart people, yeah. But at the end of the day, this is creating a monopoly with taxpayer dollars to the detriment of the United States and everybody else. We did not sign up for this, okay? People signed up for their prices to go down, for their lives to get better, not to line Elon Musk's pocket even more and more. And so, yes, this is very dangerous because he's so multifaceted. And let me also add, he has our Social Security information. He has, voting, all of the data mining that they've done when they rummaged through the United States government. And they have aggregated data that typically had been housed separately because you don't want to have one person have access to all this data and create dossiers on every American. This is the same person that has that information as well. So he has used the United States government for his personal gain. He's gotten everything he can get out of it in terms of the information on hundreds of millions of Americans, and he's going to take that pillaging globally even more. So yeah, this is disturbing. It's very disturbing. And the only thing that I can hope, which I ain't going to say I'm too optimistic about, is if we should have elections again, the first person that the DOJ needs to be on is Elon Musk's ass. There needs to be a special prosecutor, not 3 years into the next Democratic term, but on day one. There needs to be a special prosecutor looking into Elon Musk. Donald Trump may have gotten immunity from the Supreme Court, but all of these elected officials, all of these ambassadors, all of these people around Elon Musk that are doing all this illegal shit, they need to be in the crosshairs of that special prosecutor on day one of the next Democratic administration.
There's nothing about Elon Musk, Greg, that I trust. No African leader should trust him. He should be nowhere near these countries. And again, they must say no. And Gambia is fighting as hard as they can, but the United States wants to break their will. I hope that brother I hope he absolutely stands strong.
I think he will, to the degree that he has strong partners. Partners may be too strong a word. Robert, again, you laid it out, brother. This is the new scramble for Africa, which isn't new at all. This goes back 500 years. This is why they snatched us. We're nearing the end of the contemporary world order. The age of Europe is coming to an end. The United States is burning brightly in terms of its white nationalism, but make no mistake about this. And this is to all those who cling furiously to the descendants of slaves concept, or foundational Black Americans, or B1s, or whatever other foolishness you've allowed grifters to inject into your brains. It's time to be smart now. This is the end of the age of Europe. All the settler states of the Western Hemisphere, which came into existence when the Spanish and the Portuguese and the French and the Dutch and the English came across the Atlantic, are either moving to the post-European era. We know, of course, that Brazil was among the countries that has been in Beijing all week for the 10th anniversary of the China-CELAC relationship, which, of course, I think that the chair of CELAC right now, which is the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States with China, is the Colombian president. They're moving past the United States. The Monroe Doctrine will be in the ash can of history, as will probably be the concept of the nation state. I'm glad you said that, Robert. Elon Musk doesn't look at the lines on a map, and neither do anybody else, any of the other Silicon Valley moguls who were at the Saudi U.S. Investment Forum in Riyadh. We're talking about planes and gifts and all that's very important and even very important to Donald Trump. But if you saw the pictures of Elon Musk shaking hands with the Saudis, perhaps you missed the fact that the CEO of Palantir and Musk's friend Alex Karp was there. Perhaps you missed that Musk's rival, Sam Altman from OpenAI was there. In other words, these people don't look at lines on a map. Only the people who are not paying attention are looking at lines on a map. Now, juxtapose that against what happens when you are in a country like Nigeria. Gambia is as low a hanging fruit as you can get. That's the point of entry. That's the experiment. Let me tell you something. Any of y'all ever met or know or been with some Nigerians understand that Nigeria is going to be ungovernable when it comes down to trying to control them. Now, of course, the lure is people want reliable internet access. So you've got millions of people. And as you say, Robert, I mean, Africa is the future. It's the present and the future. Ultimately, well over 1 billion, closer to 2 when you integrate all of us who are not born directly on the continent, but who are Africans into the equation. We are now talking about countries that will reject the quote unquote soft power of the United States, even as it unilaterally disarms in that regard. Shout out to little Marco, who has decided that he's going to be the errand boy in degrading the concept of American values, which was already degraded, but the rest of the world's laughing and has always been laughing. It's getting louder. But on the African continent, Africa just needs a little bit of breathing room. This might be the last chance it has for the next cycle, and like you say, Robert, maybe through the end of the century, to get that breathing room to build our innate capacity to develop our own spaces. Finally, for the American Negro, this is the message to the American Negro. Your master don't love you, never has. You will never be a member of this polity as some kind of equal partner. And your best bet is to reach your connections globally, because what they are doubling and quadrupling down on in the United States, turning inward, is the imminent collapse of the polity as it recedes in global influence and global power. And Donald John Trump is no more an American than Elon Musk is when it comes to feathering his own pockets with your tax dollars. So while you clinging to the flag, he clinging to his pocketbook. And we would best build solidarity with the people of the world. And that's going to be our best bet to resist as we fight for our voting rights and all that stuff here domestically.
It's a lot that we have to recognize, and trust me, it is not going to end.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
You must be my new lieutenant governor.
I'm ready for duty. I think I can make a difference.
Just be a good girl.
I'm gonna need some dinner and a lot of wine. I really don't think that he thinks I'm qualified. What you gonna do? Pump my shoulders.
When you want something and you earn something, you fight for it.
Kids, do you know who this is? Mary J. Blige.
I didn't know we was about to be attacked by all of Nick Cannon's kids at once.
Folks, we are really dealing with a thug in the White House. Today, they sent a letter to Harvard University saying that they are banning any international students at Harvard, and if anyone with a visa, they must transfer in the next 72 hours unless they comply with
these directives from these idiots? Well, guess what? A federal judge literally has just blocked them from terminating the legal status of international students. A U.S. District Judge Jeffrey White has made that decision, blocking the Trump from terminating the legal status of international students, including at Harvard, all across the country. All across the country as well, plus from arresting and detaining them. This is unbelievable, what was announced by the Trump administration. Again, ordering them to comply with this directive that just makes no sense. I just want to quickly go to my panel. Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. Also joining us is Dr. Nola Haynes, of course, first of all, she's at Georgetown University. And of course, foreign policy expert. No, these people, and we'll be joined shortly by Reese Colbert. Folks, no, these people are literally insane. This is a jihad they have against Harvard. That's what's going on here.
1,000%. The part-time occupant in the White House has something against my alma mater. Sorry, boo-boo, that you didn't get to go there, because, you know, whatever he doesn't get to do, whoever doesn't want to play with him and his toys, then, you know, he wants to break them and their toys. I'm just so over Trump and his little cabal. Every day is something with these people. And it's so petty and it's so childish and it's so obvious and it's embarrassing. Like, I am over these people, but I'm happy the judge stepped in and said, no, slow your roll. You cannot unilaterally, I'm going to say this word a lot tonight, Roland, unilaterally. I know Trump thinks he's a king, but he is not a king. You just can't decree things by order of King Trump. That's not how it works. I'm going to stop there.
Greg, they're thugs. They're absolute thugs. That's who they are. They're going after Harvard. They're going after Columbia. They're going after all these schools. And to sit here and say, because first of all, 27% of Harvard's students are international. And those are the people who pay full freight. And so Trump is trying to go after the money.
Yes. And, you know, Roland, it's certainly absurd. He's certainly a clown, or as Lamont King calls him, a bozo. Bose, not Hove, but Bose. But the reality is that there's a method to this madness. It isn't in his dissembled, dissolving brain. It's in the brain of Russell Vought and Project 2025. You know, remember, Russell Vaught's the quarterback of Project 2025. Chapter 2 of Project 2025, Executive Office of the President of the United States. Vought elaborates on this absurd, expansive theory of the executive. Basically, the president is a king in the mind of this clown. I'm saying that to say this. The confrontation is the point. The Atlantic just did a long article on Russell Vought talking about Trump 2.0 and where this is headed. This goes back to what we've talked about so many times, and you've walked through Project 2025, the Schedule F. You know, he's the architect of that, replacing all the staff people in the federal government with loyalists and all that. But in this particular case, remember last week, the Supreme Court ruled trying to push back, but not completely like they should have, against the idea that a federal judge in one district can make a ruling that would apply to the country. Well, we just saw that. We're seeing that in real time in terms of the importance of that with this ruling. I'm saying all that to say this. Yes, your little boy didn't get into Harvard, Donald. I'm sorry about that with Barron. And yes, as you say, Nolan, as you say, Dr. Haynes, it's petty, it's vindictive. And the deeper approach is destroy the universities, destroy the federal government completely. Not shrink it down where it can drown, like Grover Norquist would say, but literally remake it into a weapon for white nationalism. And remember, in terms of HBCUs, this is always stuck in the craw of those. Like, remember when you covered the story about those white nationalists in North Carolina that wanted to stop out-of-state people from coming? Remember the percentage of international students, and I'm not just talking about continental African students, the percentage of international students at HBCUs is outsized. They're from Nepal, they're from China. This is an existential threat to the intellectual infrastructure of K-12 and university level They're not going to get away with it in the short term, but make no mistake about it, they are doing this to force a confrontation with the courts, not to try to be nice and avoid one.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what's going on. I mean, so they want this battle. They want this fight. This is what it's all about. Reese Cobra joins us right now. And Reese, I'm telling you, let me be real clear. I don't give a damn about Harvard. I don't
Yeah, you
care.
say that all the time. Every time I wear my Harvard gear.
I don't give a damn about Harvard. I don't give a damn about any of these Ivy League schools. But what I do understand is that what they are doing is a precursor to what they want to do to other schools, and HBCUs better take notice.
Well, that's 100% correct, Roland. And to be fair, that's probably why they go after Harvard, because who's going to be that sympathetic of Harvard? It's a bunch of Ivy League educated people. They have massive amounts of money in terms of their endowments. And so they don't necessarily make the most sympathetic cause, even for the average layperson who doesn't agree with what Donald Trump is doing.
But also, Reese, though, if you do go after Harvard and take them down because they have the most money, anybody below them. Listen, you saw the other Ivy League schools that buckled because they can't withstand that level of pressure like Harvard can. So you go after the big fish.
And that's why we have to connect the dots, as you've been doing, or as everybody's been doing so far. This is an opening salvo. Now, how many times have we said that over the past couple of years about what the opening salvo was? It's a test case. And so why not take out the biggest fish that you can take out first, and then everything else crumbles? But the other part of it is just the humanitarian aspect of it. Harvard is powerful. Individuals are not powerful. And so if people have to be worried about being snatched off the street because arbitrarily Kristi Noem with her stupid ass, or whoever, Marco Rubio, decides that they're going to revoke a foreign student's visa status, that it makes them less likely to not only want to study at Harvard, but to want to be in this country at all. Mm-hmm. And so we have made a trade-off through Donald Trump between white, South African, pro-apartheid peasants and physicists and doctoral students who are from other countries, all because of the priority and the delusional misplacement of value that Donald Trump puts on whiteness. And so this week could not be any more glaring about how wrong the choices this administration is making and how wrong of a direction this country is heading in. Every single thing, when you look at all the choices that are being made and the fake justification for them, this shit is beyond off the walls crazy.
It is.
And what we're dealing with here again, and I need people to understand, and we're putting this in the context because it rightly deserves it. We're dealing with thugs. We're dealing with arrogant individuals. We're dealing with people who do not believe in the rule of law.
Right.
These folk don't believe it, Nola, and what they are in their minds. The only court that matters is the right-wing Supreme Court, and they pissed off at Amy Coney Barrett because she's not falling in line. She's not Clarence Thomas or Sam Alito, and so they've thought, oh man, we got us 6 hardcore. They let go of Roberts because he still pissed them off with the Affordable Care Act. They thought they had 5 solid. Now they mad as all get out because so Trump's whole deal is, yo, I got my court. I can do whatever I want to do because they gonna let me.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. And it's really interesting when you are in power. And in this case, we're talking about the Supreme Court. And if you look at Congress, they're really you have to reconcile with yourself. Am I willing to forego my own power in service of Donald Trump? And I think this is one of the things that we're confronting, right? It's people trying to deal with their own situation and their own power, and then also realizing, wait a minute, the seriousness of what we are talking about. You are literally talking about abandoning the rule of law. They already, work their hoodoo in terms of voting. So they want people to be complicit in completely destroying democracy. And when you are in a situation to where you can participate in that, and then you have to say, wait a minute, and you have to really sit down with yourself and ask yourself, is this what I want to be doing? Is this what I want to, is this the legacy that I want to leave? To completely abdicate my own power and service to a megalomaniac, right? So, and, I don't know in all truth, how many Republicans are actually going to have that come to Jesus moment. I'm tired of hearing from people that, well, behind closed doors, they're saying this, they're saying that. I don't care what they're saying behind closed doors. What I care about are their actions. What I care about is what they did last night, with this horrible, big ass ugly bill. There's nothing beautiful about it. So when it comes to the Supreme Court, where we know that that's kind of like the last bastion of hope, they kind of are like the levee walls, right? You really have to confront yourself and ask yourself, what do you want your legacy to be? Do you want all those history books written about you being complicit and completely giving Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, all of them, Stephen Miller, the whole gang, the whole cabal, the entirety of the United States of America? It's overwhelming. It's exhausting because every day it's something. But I will say, just like Trump won, the judiciary has stepped up in many cases to hold the walls of democracy. We'll see if that will continue to happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, Greg, I for all them simple Simons out there who we kept trying to explain why the courts matter, and they listening to these fools, yelling and screaming that they Pan-Africanists and all this little nonsense, and saying, oh, your vote don't matter, and them judges don't matter. Well, guess what? We are literally seeing this thing being barely held together because of judges. And what's pissing Republicans off is conservative appointed judges who kind of believe in the rule of law. And it's driving them crazy that they're ruling against them.
It is driving them crazy, and it's a compelling choice of phrase that you use there, Roland. A white nationalist isn't just a domestic white nationalist. When you talk about something being barely held together, I'll tell you something else is being barely held together, and that's this coalition that is allowing this. The domestic white nationalists, the white nativists, the white American nativists, the white U.S. nativists are America first, for sure. But then you've got the white internationalists. This is what we're seeing with the Afrikaners. Donald Trump wants to set him up as the defender of the white world. So if you're anywhere in the white world, come to America. This is, of course, the fever dream brain of Stephen Miller, his little political cretin in the White House. They want to attract all the white people here as if they can reverse the demographic, which of course they can't. But then there are other elements. Of course, Elon Musk is a pure grifter. That's why we saw him in the White House yesterday, because he wants Starlink in South Africa, and Cyril Ramaphosa and the South African government isn't going to allow any of his business to do that come there without making sure that there's an equitable distribution among the population in South Africa. That's why he's pissed off. Then you have, of course, Steve Bannon, who's fighting with Elon Musk because he's a white globalist and also a nativist. All those elements are there. In this case, you're absolutely right about the courts. As everyone has said, as Reese has said, and as Nola's just said, the courts are the line of last defense. But remember what Russell Vought and what those who believe in this unitary executive theory are saying is that the courts don't matter. So what they're going to do, what they are pushing toward, is open defiance. That's why you saw the judge in Massachusetts with the rendering that sent people somewhere out of the United States. Apparently it was supposed to be South Sudan, but we don't know now where the plane is. And so the judge says, well, they can remain outside of the country, but they must have these cases resolved. They got to have due process. Well, that's a concession, but what it really is an attempt for the courts to say, we don't want to just openly hold you in contempt, because what we think you will do is simply say, we don't care. You see that previewed in Propaganda Barbie. You see that previewed in the Christian soldier Pete Hegseth, the defense, who's having prayer meetings now in the damn Pentagon because he is a white Christian nationalist crusader. You see that previewed when they say that the president and the executive branch simply does not believe. What does that mean? That means the law says this, but the president doesn't believe that the law is correct. when you say don't believe, finally, it underscores the point you just made. You are saying that there is a rule of law, but that rule of law is in your addled, warped, theocratic mind. The head of your law is your imaginary white nationalist Jesus, and that empowers you to do whatever the hell you want. And that is where we are.
See, Ray, when I listen to these people, oh, you have Trump derangement syndrome. Y'all just keep talking about this. I'm like, y'all don't understand. These people are not playing. They are trying to figure out how much can we get away with? How much damage can we wreak in this country? That's the game here. This ain't no time to be playing jokes. These people are deadly serious about their thuggish ways.
Absolutely. I mean, look, they've already gotten generational gains. We said this back when when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and we said that was on the line in 2020 as well. And it's the same thing. What they're playing for now is for keeps. They're not playing for a generation. They're playing for a permanent realignment that will solidify their white minority rule, and more specifically, white billionaire minority rule. Because trust me, those little South Afrikaners that they done brought in, they're going to be out there tilling the fields with the other white farmers that are being displaced by this war on USAID and the tariff wars. And so this is strictly about making sure that they are entrenched and ingrained in every single aspect when it comes to power. That's why they're going after Congresswoman McIver. They're saying they've already said judges don't matter. They arrested a white lady judge, and she's still facing charges in Wisconsin. Now they've arrested a black woman congresswoman because they figured, who gonna give a fuck about a black woman being already abused by these mass ICE agents, and then turn around and have her power, the power that is vested in her through the Constitution and through her duties and her being an elected official, stripped from her. And so they have strategically, and to their credit, they've been very, very clever about this. They have each time picked their target that will result in the least amount of resistance, that will result in people saying, well, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That's what they're doing right now with this Medicaid cuts, with these SNAP cuts. I ain't on Medicaid. I ain't on SNAP. I work for my stuff. I ain't getting no hands out. They know what they're doing. And even though as much as we try to call it out and try to tell people like, stay woke, like this is what the tea is, people still have their heads in the sand. That's why we had 89 million motherfuckers stay at home when everything was on the line. Not even just trying to undo some of the damage of Trump, which Biden Harris managed to do, but to try to hang on to some semblance of a country. I know Dr. Carr ain't gonna miss it, but for the rest of us who kind of like the kind of thing, we got a good game going on, shit's canceled. They playing for keeps, like you said, Roland.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Attention! We're back, bigger and and stronger than ever. Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
What's up?
Being a black man, we gotta stop letting this slide. With new hosts.
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
And big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind. It's Oprah Winfrey.
Subscribe today at Truth Talks Live.
Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you.
And don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and Truth Talks Live.
I'll see you there.